Poor girl sees a boy trapped in a burning car. The billionaire father sees everything and his life changes forever. Edward Caswell's phone began to ring at 6 in the morning. He got up automatically, already grabbing the device. That was how his days started, always with urgency. "Daddy?" Benji appeared at the bedroom door, clutching his teddy bear. 4 years old, hair sticking up, eyes still sleepy. "Hey, champ, why are you up so early?" "Aunt Marina didn't come. I'm thirsty." Marina, the babysitter. Edward remembered her call last night. She had a bad flu and would be out for at least a week. The phone rang again. It was Sarah, his secretary. "Mr. Caswell, sorry to bother you so early. The Japanese client called. They need to move the meeting up to 9 o'clock. 9, but it was scheduled for 11. "I know, sir, but their CEO managed to get an earlier flight. It's take it or leave it." Edward looked at Benji. The boy rubbed his eyes, still half asleep while standing. "Okay, Sarah. Confirm with them. I'll be there before 9. Legal just sent the final changes to the contract. They need your approval before the meeting. Send it all by email. I'll review it on the way." He hung up and picked Benji up in his arms. The boy rested his head on Edward's shoulder. "Let's have breakfast, and then Daddy will drive you to school." "I don't want to go to school. I want to stay with you." "I know, son, but Daddy has to work. It's a very important day." He prepared breakfast quickly. Cereal, milk, juice. Benji ate slowly, nearly dozing over his bowl. Edward used the time to check emails, review figures, and prepare arguments. $50 million. The company's future depended on this meeting. "Daddy, you're not eating anything." "Daddy will eat later. Now let's go. I need to get you ready." He helped Benji put on his school uniform. The boy was so sleepy that Edward practically dressed him like a doll. He grabbed the backpack and lunchbox and headed downstairs to the garage. "Climb into the car, Benji." The boy climbed in and got settled in his car seat. Edward fastened the seatbelt carefully. Benji was already closing his eyes again. "Daddy, can I sleep a little longer?" "Sure, champ. Sleep, and I'll wake you at school." Benji hugged his teddy bear and fell asleep instantly. Edward closed the back door gently so as not to make any noise. He got into the car and started the engine. The air conditioning created a cool, pleasant environment. He pulled out of the garage just as the phone rang again. "Caswell, it's Peterson. Have you reviewed the third quarter numbers?" "Yes, sir. Everything is ready for the presentation." "Great. This contract is vital. Understand? We cannot lose it. You can count on me, sir." Traffic was chaotic. Construction on the main avenue forced a detour. Edward took side streets. The GPS recalculating constantly. Every minute mattered. More calls, issues in the sales department, HR questions, approval for an emergency purchase. Edward handled everything while driving, and his mind split 1,000 ways. He finally arrived in the business district. Towers of glass and steel rose against the sky. His office was on the 20th floor of one of the most modern buildings. The private parking lot was closed. A maintenance sign blocked the entrance. "Perfect," he muttered, looking for alternatives. Across the street, there was a public lot, completely exposed to the sun. No cover, no shade. He found a spot and parked. It was 8:50, 10 minutes to reach the conference room. He turned off the engine, grabbed his briefcase, laptop, and phone. He checked that he had all the documents. He got out of the car, closed the door, and locked it with the remote. Beep, beep. Then he ran toward the building. Edward Caswell was known for his absolute focus. When he entered work mode, the outside world simply disappeared. That was the trait that had taken him to the top. It was also what made him forget everything else, including his 4-year-old son sleeping in the back seat. He entered the building and took the elevator. Sarah was waiting with fresh coffee and the final documents to sign. "Are they here yet?" "Yes, sir." "They're in the conference room." "Perfect. Today we'll make history." The meeting started promptly at 9. 3 Japanese executives, serious, formal, tough negotiators. Edward presented numbers, projections, and guarantees. They questioned every detail. An hour passed. Outside, the sun climbed relentlessly. The parking lot turned into a scorching slab. Black asphalt absorbing every ray. Metal cars heating up like ovens. Inside Edward's car, the temperature began to rise, first slowly, then more quickly. The closed interior amplified the heat. In his sleep, Benji stirred, furrowing his brow. Sweat formed on his forehead, discomfort seeping into his dreams. 2 hours passed. The meeting remained intense. Clauses were negotiated, values discussed, deadlines adjusted. Edward was completely immersed. Nothing existed beyond that table, those numbers, that contract. In the car, Benji woke up. His first sensation was extreme thirst. His mouth was completely dry. Then came the heat, oppressive, suffocating. "Daddy." He looked around, confused. He was still in the car. But where was Daddy? Why was it so hot? "Daddy, where are you?" He tried to open the door. The handle wouldn't budge. He pulled harder. The child's safety lock prevented it. He tried the other door. Same thing. "Daddy, get me out, please." Panic came quickly. The air was heavy, hard to breathe. Every breath felt like burning, his shirt soaked with sweat. The heat intensifying. Benji pounded on the window with his little hands. He screamed and cried. His voice grew hoarse. No one passed by. The parking lot was deserted under the blazing sun. "Help! Someone! Help!" His strength began to fail. His vision blurred. His head spun. He curled up in the seat, crying softly. Across the street, Lena stopped to count her money. $2.30. There was still a long way to go to pay for her mother's medicine. 6 years old, frail but determined. She had been selling candy since she was 5. She had no choice. Her mother was sick. Her father was absent. She was the one who brought food home. A strange smell reached her nose. Burning, rubber, melted plastic. Lena followed the smell. It came from the parking lot. She crossed the street, curious. She saw the smoke first, thin wisps coming from under the hood of a black car, small flames beginning to appear, and then she saw movement inside the car. She ran, got closer. Her heart raced. A boy, small, lying in the seat, barely moving. No, no. Joe? Lena dropped the candy box on the ground. She tried the door, locked. She ran to the other side, also locked. She pounded on the glass. "Hey, wake up! Wake up!" Benji opened his eyes slowly. He saw the girl. He tried to speak, but couldn't. The flames grew, the smoke thickened. There was no time. "Hold on. I'll get you out." Lena frantically searched for something to break the glass. She found a rock, too big for her small hands, too heavy for her child's strength. But there was no choice. She lifted the rock above her head, using all her body weight. She struck the rear window. Crack, the glass cracked, spiderwebbing across the surface. But it still held. Lena hit again. Her arms trembled with effort. Again. On the 20th floor, Edward checked his watch. 11 a.m. "Gentlemen, I believe we have reached an agreement." Formal smiles, handshakes. The $50 million contract was closed. "Sarah, prepare the press release. We just made history." And then, like a punch to the gut, the memory hit. Benji, in the car, alone, for 2 hours, under the sun. "Benji!" Edward knocked over his chair as he stood. He ran out of the room, leaving everyone stunned. He bypassed the elevator, 20 floors. He ran down the stairs like a madman. No, please, God, no. Each step felt like an eternity. Each floor a torture. 2 hours. 2 hours under the sun. How could he forget? How could he? He burst through the building's doors. The midday heat hit him like a wall. He ran to the parking lot. He saw the car, smoke coming from under the hood, small flames, and a girl, small, thin, desperate, pounding on the rear window with a huge rock. Crash! The glass finally gave way. Shards flew everywhere, cutting Lena's arms, hands, and face. She didn't care. She shoved her arm through the hole, cutting herself even more deeply. She unlocked the door. Edward arrived just in time as she pushed the door open. "Benji!" Lena pulled the boy out. Benji was semi-conscious, his body limp. She used all her strength to drag him out. "Take him!" Lena shouted. "Quick!" Edward snatched Benji from her arms. The boy was burning with fever. He could barely breathe. "Benji, son, open your eyes, please." Benji coughed and opened his eyes with difficulty. He saw his father. Weak tears trickled down his cheeks. "Daddy, you left me." The words shattered Edward. He hugged his son, crying openly. "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry Daddy messed up. Daddy messed up so badly." Sirens approached. Someone had called the fire department. In seconds, the scene was filled with fire trucks. Firefighters attacked the flames with extinguishers. Paramedics rushed to their side. "We need to take the boy immediately," said one paramedic, placing Benji on a stretcher. "Severe heat stroke, dehydration. We need IV fluids urgently." Another paramedic went to Lena. She was sitting on the ground looking at her cut arms, blood everywhere. "My God, girl, what did you do?" "I had to get him out," Lena said simply. "The glass wouldn't break." Edward knelt beside her as the paramedics began treating her cuts. "You saved my son. You're an angel." Lena shook her head. "I'm not an angel. I'm Lena. I sell candy." "How old are you, Lena?" 6. 6 years old. Edward looked at her arms, dozens of cuts, some deep, all to save a boy she had never met before. "Why did you do it? You could have been hurt much worse." "He was going to die," Lena said, as if it were obvious. "I couldn't let him die. My mother always says we have to help others." A police officer approached. "Sir, are you the boy's father?" "Yes, I forgot him. I left my son in the car for 2 hours." The officer took notes, his expression severe. "We'll need a full statement. This is very serious, sir." I know, but please, the girl, Lena, she saved my son. Look at her injuries. She hurt herself to save him." The ambulances were ready. Benji was in one on oxygen and IV fluids. Lena was in the other, paramedics still working on her cuts. "Mr. Caswell," the officer called, "you need to decide which ambulance you'll go in." Edward looked between the two. His son needed him. But that girl... "Can I go with both of them?" "Please." They're heading to the same hospital. "You can go with your son and meet the girl there." Edward climbed into the ambulance with Benji, holding his little hand for the entire ride. The boy was now asleep, the IV fluids already taking effect. "Never again," Edward whispered. "Daddy will never leave you again, I promise." Through the rear window, he saw the other ambulance following. Inside, a 6-year-old heroine who had risked everything for a stranger. The hospital appeared ahead. Edward closed his eyes. The image was etched forever. Lena, bloodied but determined, breaking the glass, saving not just a life, but his soul. Some debts are impossible to repay. But Edward Caswell would spend the rest of his life trying. For Benji, for Lena. For the second chance he didn't deserve, but which a brave child had given him anyway. The ambulance siren cut through traffic like a blade. Edward held Benji's small hand, watching every rise and fall of his chest. The boy slept under light sedatives, his face still red from the extreme heat. But his breathing was stable. "Vital signs are normalizing," said the paramedic, a young woman with a tight ponytail. "His body temperature is coming down. He was very lucky." Lucky, the word felt wrong. It wasn't luck when you nearly killed your own child through negligence. It wasn't luck when a 6-year-old had to risk her life to fix your mistake. "How long was he in the car?" the paramedic asked, adjusting the IV. 2 hours, Edward's voice came out hoarse. "I forgot him for 2 hours." The paramedic said nothing, but Edward saw the judgment in her eyes. He deserved that. He deserved much worse. Through the small ambulance window, he could see the other emergency vehicle right behind. Lena was in there, the girl who had saved Benji, the girl who had broken the glass with her own hands, cutting herself to save a child she had never seen before. "Daddy!" The faint voice made Edward lean over the stretcher. "I'm here, son. Daddy is here." "It's hot." "I know, but it will get better. We're going to the hospital." "The girl, she got me out." "Yes, son. She saved you." Benji closed his eyes again, drifting back to sleep. Edward continued holding his hand as his son's words echoed in his mind. "Daddy, you left me." 4 words that would mark him forever. The hospital came into view, St. Mary's Children's Hospital, one of the best in the city. Edward closed his eyes. The image imprinted forever. Lena, bloodied but determined, breaking the car window, saving his child, saving his soul. The ambulances stopped simultaneously at the emergency entrance. Edward saw Lena carried out of the other vehicle. Her arms were wrapped in improvised bandages, stained with red. She looked around curiously, as if riding in an ambulance were an adventure. When her eyes met Edward's, she waved with her uninjured hand, a simple gesture that destroyed him even more. After everything, she still cared enough to be kind. "We'll take your son straight to pediatrics," a doctor waiting there informed him. "We need to run a series of tests." Edward followed Benji's stretcher through white, brightly lit corridors. The smell of disinfectant was strong. Nurses and doctors moved with practiced efficiency. Each one knew exactly what to do. Except him. He didn't know how to be a father. He had proved that today. They placed Benji in an observation room. Monitors were hooked up. More IV fluids, blood tests, a chest X-ray to check his lungs. Each procedure added weight to Edward's chest. "Dr. Chen will review the results," said a nurse. "You can stay here with him." Edward sat on the chair next to the bed. Benji looked so small among the white sheets, so vulnerable. How many times had he missed moments like this? How many times had he chosen work over his son? "Mr. Caswell?" Edward looked up. A police officer was at the door, the same one from the parking lot. "We need to talk about the incident." Edward nodded. He knew it was coming. There were laws about child abandonment, consequences. He would accept them all. The officer entered, opening a notepad. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Edward recounted every detail. The babysitter's illness, the rescheduled meeting, the rush. How he got out of the car and simply forgot. "You forgot," the officer repeated flatly. "Yes, I was focused on the meeting. 50 million at stake. It felt like the most important thing in the world at the time. And now, Edward looked at Benji. "Now I would give 100 times that amount to go back in time." The officer took more notes. "The girl who saved your son, she said something interesting." Edward waited. "She said she heard him crying. That's what drew her attention. Your son was crying, Mr. Caswell, loudly, for a long time." Each word was a punch. Edward imagined little Benji alone, scared, calling for him, screaming and crying, while he sat in an air-conditioned room negotiating contracts. "Child Protective Services will be notified," the officer continued. "A full investigation will be conducted." "I understand. There may be criminal charges, negligence, abandonment." "I know." The officer folded his notepad. "Your luck today was that the girl acted quickly. Those seconds made the difference between life and death." After the officer left, Edward was left alone with his guilt, a physical, heavy feeling crushing his chest. How had he reached this point? When had work become more important than everything else? He knew the answer. After Clara died, after cancer took his wife, he had buried himself in work. It was easier to deal with numbers than with grief. Easier to close deals than to handle a baby asking about mommy. "I'm sorry, Clara," he whispered. "I messed everything up." "Daddy." Benji was waking up. Edward quickly wiped his eyes. "Hey, champ. How are you feeling?" "Thirsty. I'll call the nurse." "Daddy, why did you leave me?" The question came without accusation, just innocent curiosity. That made it even more devastating. "Daddy made a terrible mistake, son. I was thinking about work and forgot the most important thing." "Is work more important than me?" "No." Edward held his son's face gently. "No, Benji. Nothing is more important than you. Daddy just forgot that for a moment and almost lost you because of it. The girl saved me. Yes, she was very brave. She cut herself. I saw the blood. I know. She got hurt to save you." "Why?" "She didn't even know me." Edward had no answer. How do you explain altruism to a 4-year-old? How do you explain that some people help simply because it's the right thing to do? Some people are special, son. They help others even when it's hard. "Like mommy," Edward's heart tightened. "Yes, like mommy." A nurse entered with water and juice. Benji drank slowly, still weak. The doctor arrived soon after with the test results. "He's stable," Dr. Chen announced. "Moderate dehydration, hypothermia, but nothing we can't handle. We'll keep him under observation for 24 hours. And the girl, Lena, she's being treated in the ER, multiple lacerations, some quite deep. Can I see her?" When they finished the procedures, Edward waited until Benji fell asleep again. Then he went to find Lena. The ER was controlled chaos, stretchers in the corridors, people waiting, the constant beeping of monitors and conversations. Edward asked for her at reception. The girl who arrived by ambulance, cuts on her arms, name Lena. "Room 3B, but only family. She saved my son, please." The receptionist hesitated, then pointed the way. Edward found the room. Lena was sitting on the gurney, legs swinging, watching fascinated as a young doctor stitched a particularly deep cut on her forearm. "Does it hurt?" the doctor asked. "A bit. But it's interesting. It's like sewing, right?" The doctor laughed. "It is. You're very brave. My mother says courage isn't not being scared. It's doing what you have to do even when you are..." Edward knocked on the door. Lena turned and smiled when she saw him. "Hi, is the boy okay?" As always, her first concern was Benji. "Yes, thanks to you." "I'm glad. I was worried. He was crying so much." Her simple words painted the image. Benji crying, alone and scared. Edward swallowed hard. "He was crying a lot," Lena continued, focused on her sutures. "That's how I saw him. I heard him crying first, then I saw the smoke." "Lena, I'm so sorry you got hurt," she shrugged. "It wasn't your fault. The glass was tough, but I had to break it, right? Otherwise, he would have died." So simple for her. Had to break the glass, had to save. No questions, no hesitation, just action. "How many stitches?" 38 so far. Some cuts were really deep. She was lucky not to hit any tendons. "Luck." Again, the wrong word. It wasn't luck, it was sacrifice. "Did it hurt a lot when you broke the glass?" "I don't remember." "I was thinking about him. All I remember is the glass wouldn't break. I had to hit it many times." Edward imagined the scene. 6-year-old Lena striking a car window with a heavy rock, each blow more urgent than the last, the fire getting closer, time running out. "Does your mother know you're here?" "No. She's sick. She can't get out of bed." "Sick how?" "Coughing. Fever. It's been a while." "And you take care of her?" "Yes, I cook, give her medicine. I sell candy to buy things." The doctor finished the last stitch, applied dressings, and gave instructions for care. "She needs to come back in a week to have the stitches removed. Keep it clean and dry." "Okay," Lena said, examining her bandaged arms. "It looks cool. I feel like a mummy." A nurse arrived with discharge papers. "Where is the guardian?" "My mother is sick," Lena explained patiently. "She can't come." "But sweetie, you can't leave by yourself. You're a minor." "I came alone. I'm always alone." The nurse looked at Edward, lost. "Are you a relative?" "No." "But..." Edward looked at Lena, 6 years old, alone in the world, caring for a sick mother, selling candy to survive. Yet, when she saw a child in danger, she did not hesitate. "I'll be responsible for her. Sir, we can't release a minor to a non-relative. She saved my son. She got hurt doing it. Please, there must be something we can do. I'll call social services." While they waited, Edward sat next to Lena. "It must hurt. It hurt worse before. Once I cut my foot on a shard of glass, really deep. My mother stitched it with ordinary thread at home. That hurt more than this. You didn't go to a hospital. Hospital is expensive. We make do." Edward thought of all the times he had complained about insignificant things. Office air conditioning too cold, coffee not at the right temperature, while a 6-year-old girl had her foot sewn at home by her mother. "How long have you been selling candy?" "Since I was 5, when my mother got sick the first time." "And your father?" "I don't have one. Never did. My mother says it's just the 2 of us against the world." 2 of them against the world, and apparently winning despite everything. The social worker arrived, a middle-aged black woman with glasses hanging around her neck. an expression of someone who had seen too much. "I'm Patricia Williams. I understand we have a situation here." Edward explained everything. The accident, the rescue, Lena's injuries, her mother's illness at home. "And you want to take the child home?" "Yes. She needs to care for her mother, and she needs someone to care for her." Patricia reviewed the papers, looking at Lena, her bandages, and Edward. "This is highly irregular." "But," she sighed, "given the exceptional circumstances, I'll authorize it, with conditions." "What are they?" "You take her straight home. You assess the living conditions. Any sign of neglect or danger, report immediately, and she must return to have her stitches removed. Of course, I'll do everything. More paperwork, more bureaucracy." Edward signed everything. He assumed responsibility, for the first time in his life, a responsibility that did not involve money. "There," Patricia said. "Lena, you can go with Mr. Caswell." "Can I see the boy first?" Lena asked. Edward smiled. Of course she wanted to see Benji. "Let's go." They returned to pediatrics. Benji was awake, eating jelly and watching cartoons. "Benji, look who came to see you." The boy's face lit up. "The brave girl." Lena approached, suddenly shy. "Hi, are you feeling better?" "I am. Strawberry jelly. Want some?" Lena shook her head. "Thanks. I'm glad you're okay." "Is your arm still hurting?" "A little, but it will heal." The two children looked at each other. Two completely different worlds united by a moment of terror and courage. "Thank you for saving me," Benji said solemnly. "You're welcome. You would do the same for me." The certainty in her voice surprised Edward. How could she have such faith in others when life had been so hard for her? "Lena needs to go home," Edward said, "but she'll come back to visit you. Promise." "I promise," Edward replied. They left the hospital. Edward went to get the car. When he returned, Lena was sitting on the curb, counting coins in the palm of her hand. "What are you doing?" "Seeing how much I lost today, I left my candy box in the parking lot. It was my day's earnings." Edward felt another stab of guilt. She had lost her day's livelihood to save Benji. "I'll make up for that." "You don't have to. I'll sell more tomorrow." Lena got into the car, looking around in awe. "It's big and clean." "Where do you live?" "East Side, you know it." Edward knew it by name, the part of the city he avoided, where his employees lived, where the other half existed. "I know where it is." On the drive, Lena pointed out landmarks. The bakery where she sometimes got stale bread, the gas station where she could use the restroom, the park where she sold candy on Sundays. Each place was a story of survival, a geography of poverty Edward had never considered. "Here," she said as they turned onto a narrow street. "Third building." Edward looked. Run-down apartment buildings squeezed together, clothes hanging from windows, children playing in the trash, stray dogs sleeping on the sidewalk. "This is where you live?" "Yes, third floor. The window with the red cloth is ours." Edward parked, locked the car. The contrast with his world was shocking. 30 minutes by car, but it felt like a different planet. "Come on," Lena said. "I'll introduce you to my mother. She'll like you. You seem nice." "Seems nice. If she only knew. If she knew he had almost killed his own son out of greed." But Edward followed her. Each step brought a revelation, each detail a silent accusation of a world he had helped create and maintain with his indifference. The building door was broken. The hallway smelled of mold and urine. The stairs creaked. On the third floor, Lena stopped in front of a door with peeling paint. "Here it is," she said, searching for the key in a hidden pocket. "Am I home?" Edward took a deep breath. He was about to enter a world he had always ignored, a world where 6-year-olds were heroes out of necessity, a world that, from today on, he could no longer pretend didn't exist. The key turned with difficulty in the rusty lock. Lena pushed the door open. It squealed on its hinges. The sound echoed down the empty hallway. "Come in," she said, as if inviting him into a palace. Edward hesitated at the threshold. The apartment was smaller than his closet. One room serving as living room, kitchen and bedroom. 2 small beds, a chipped wooden table, a stove with only 2 working burners. The walls were stained with moisture. The ceiling flaked in places, but it was clean, surprisingly clean. Every item in its place. The beds made with military precision, the few dishes stacked neatly, flowers in tin cans adding color to the space. "Mom," Lena called softly. "I brought a visitor." A weak voice came from one of the beds. "Who is it, dear?" "It's the boy's father, the one I told you about." Edward approached. Lena's mother lay covered with a patched but clean blanket. She looked about 30 but seemed much older, too thin, pale, with sunken eyes glowing with fever. "Ma'am," Edward began, but realized he didn't know her name. "Carmen," the woman said, trying to sit up. "Carmen Santos. Mrs. Santos. I'm Edward Caswell. I came to talk about what your daughter did today. She told me she saved your boy." Carmen coughed, a dry cough making her double over in pain. "I always knew she had a big heart." Big heart is an understatement. She risked her life. She got seriously injured. Edward looked at Lena, who was removing her bandages to wash her arms. "Lena, leave that until later. You need to keep your dressings dry. But they're so dirty, and they smell like the hospital. You can change them later. Leave them as they are now." Lena made a sour face, but obeyed. Carmen followed the conversation with interest. "You have a way with children. How many do you have?" "Only Benji, my son, the one your daughter saved." "And his mother?" Edward hesitated. The question was simple, but the answer always hurt. "She died 2 years ago, cancer." Carmen nodded in understanding. "Then you know what it's like to raise a child alone." "No, I don't. I have a babysitter, a maid, a driver. My reality is different. But the responsibility is the same. The fear is the same. The love is the same." Edward hadn't thought of it that way. For him, raising Benji was always logistical. Hire people, solve problems. But fear, love, those parts he tried to avoid. "Mrs. Santos, I came here for a specific reason. Your daughter was injured, saving my son. I want to help." "You don't have to. We get by." "I know you do, but I want to help anyway." Carmen studied him carefully. Edward felt judged, probably failing the test. Why? The question was direct, without detours. Edward appreciated that. "Because I have a debt I will never be able to repay. My daughter didn't save your son for payment." "I know. That's why the debt is unpayable." Carmen coughed again, harder this time. Lena ran to her side with a glass of water. "Drink slowly, Mom." "Thank you, Angel." Edward observed the interaction, the mutual care, the evident love between them. Did he and Benji have that, or did they just have a routine of convenience? "What kind of help?" Carmen asked after drinking. "Medical to start. You need proper treatment. Doctors are expensive. I'll pay private care." "The best." Carmen shook her head. "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because afterward you'll leave, go back to your life, and we'll be left depending on something you can't maintain." The logic was airtight. Edward realized Carmen had experience with broken promises. "What if I guarantee I'm not leaving?" "How?" Edward had no answer. "How do you guarantee something you don't know if you can keep?" "Mom," Lena interrupted, "he seems honest. Appearing and being are different things, dear. I know. But look into his eyes. It's not like the others." Carmen looked into Edward's eyes. A deep, scrutinizing gaze. Edward felt naked, exposed, as if she could see every mistake, flaw and lie he had ever told. "All right," she said finally, "but slowly. Step by step." "Of course. Can I bring a doctor here?" "Here. A private doctor. He makes house calls." Carmen hesitated. "How much does that cost?" "You don't need to worry about money." "I do need to. I want to know what I'm agreeing to." Edward took a deep breath. He was about to give a number that was insignificant to him, but would be a fortune for her. "About $500 per visit." The silence was deafening. Carmen processed the information. $500 was more than her 3-month income. "My God," she whispered. "It's nothing for me," Edward said quickly. "It's not a sacrifice. For me, it's a lifetime." The distance between their worlds had never been clearer. Edward had earned more than that in the 2 hours he forgot Benji in the car. Carmen had probably never seen so much money in one place. That's why I want to help. I have resources. You have needs. It's simple. Nothing is simple when it involves money, Carmen said. But all right, I'll accept the doctor. Great, I'll call now. Edward took out his phone, dialed his private doctor, Dr. Morrison, explained the situation, and requested an urgent visit. He'll come this afternoon, Edward announced after hanging up. Today? Carmen sounded frightened. But I don't have good clothes and the house is a mess. The house is clean. You're sick. The doctor understands that. But, Mum, Lena interrupted, let him help. You're very sick. Carmen relented. Edward realized Lena had more influence over her mother than she should. A 6-year-old child making adult decisions. I need a few more things, Edward said. Food, medicine, basic supplies. We have food. Edward looked around and saw a nearly empty cupboard, some cans and a packet of pasta. Not enough food for a sick person and a child. Let me bring some things. Please. This time Carmen made no protest. Weakness was overcoming her pride. Edward passed the details to Lena. Phone numbers, doctor's appointment time, instructions for the dressings. I'll be back in a few hours, he said, with supplies and the doctor. You don't need to come with the doctor, Carmen said. He knows what to do. I want to make sure everything is okay. Carmen nodded. Edward headed for the door, then stopped. Lena, you need to rest. You can't go selling candy today. But the money. Today I'll take care of the money. You take care of getting better. Lena made a protesting face, but Carmen cut her off. Listen to him, daughter. Just for today. Edward left the apartment, his head spinning. The poverty he saw was not the romanticized poverty of films. It was raw, real, dignified but desperate. He drove to the nearest supermarket, not the fancy organic place he usually shopped at, but a regular store with normal prices. He filled 2 carts, nutritious food, cleaning products, basic medicine, fruits, vegetables, meat. In line at the register, he calculated in his head, $200, equivalent to a fine dining meal. For Carmen and Lena, it would be food for weeks. He returned to the apartment loaded with bags. Carmen was sleeping. Lena helped him put everything away, her eyes wide in amazement. It's so much, she whispered. It's just basics. For us, it's a lot. Edward understood. Perspective was everything. His basics were there plenty. Dr. Morrison arrived at 4 o'clock. A 60-year-old man with grey hair and a competent air, Edward accompanied him to the apartment. Jesus, the doctor muttered upon seeing the conditions. This is where they live, Edward said simply. Dr. Morrison examined Carmen carefully, asked questions, checked vital signs, and had Lena step out during parts of the exam. Edward and Lena waited in the hallway. Will my mother be okay? Edward asked. She will. She always pulls through. She's strong. How long has she been sick? About 2 months. It started with a little cold, then got worse. And you've cared for her all this time by yourself. Who else would? Her matter-of-fact response broke Edward's heart, a 6-year-old carrying responsibilities most adults couldn't bear. Dr. Morrison emerged from the apartment 20 minutes later. We need to talk, he said to Edward. They went down to the building's hall. Pneumonia, Dr. Morrison said. Advanced, likely caused by an untreated respiratory infection. Is it serious? It's treatable, but she's very weak, malnourished, and her immune system is compromised. What does she need? Antibiotics, absolute rest, proper nutrition, and, he hesitated, and hospitalization would be ideal, at least for a week. Edward thought of Carmen, stubborn, proud. She won't accept that. Then we treat her here. But she will need constant care, someone who understands medication and knows when to call for help. Her daughter is 6. Exactly. It can't be her responsibility. Dr. Morrison prescribed antibiotics, syrups, pain relievers, an extensive list of expensive medications. I'll pick everything up at the pharmacy, Edward said. And who will administer it? Edward hadn't thought about that. Carmen could barely get out of bed. Lena was just a child. I can hire a nurse. Here, in this neighborhood, at night. The doctor was right. No private nurse would come here after dark. So what do we do? Either she goes to the hospital, or someone stays here with them. Edward looked at the dilapidated building, the broken windows, the dark corridors. I will stay. Dr. Morrison looked surprised. Sir, I will stay here and care for them. Do you have medical care experience? No, but I can learn, and someone needs to be here. Doctor. Morrison nodded slowly. All right, I'll teach you the basics. But any worsening, any sign of alarm, you call me immediately. They returned to the apartment. Dr. Morrison explained the diagnosis and treatment to Carmen. She listened silently, processing. Pneumonia, she repeated. Treatable, Dr. Morrison assured. But she must follow the treatment exactly. And if I can't afford the medications? Edward anticipated her question. I already paid for everything. Carmen looked at him. Why? Why are you doing this? Because your daughter saved my son, and because it's right. Carmen closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears were there. Thank you, she whispered. Doctor. Morrison spent another hour explaining medications, schedules, and warning signs. Edward took notes and asked questions. He wanted to be sure he understood. After the doctor left, Edward called home to speak with the nurse at the hospital where Benji was admitted. How is he? He's fine. He ate everything at lunch. He asked for you several times. Tell him Daddy will pick him up tomorrow and that Daddy is learning to be better. He hung up and looked around the apartment. He would spend the night here, on the floor, most likely, caring for two people he had met only hours ago. You didn't have to stay, Carmen said weakly. I had to. Lena cannot care for you alone. She always has. She shouldn't have to. She's a child. Carmen looked at her daughter, who was organizing the new medications. She grew up too fast. All children here grow up too fast, right? Those who have to survive, yes. Edward thought of Benji, protected, spoiled, kept like a baby. Meanwhile, Lena, of the same age, was basically supporting a family. That's going to change, he said. What? Lena will no longer have to worry about survival, at least not on her own. Carmen studied him. You don't know us. You don't know if we are good people. Why do you trust so much? Edward looked at Lena, attentively setting up the supplies like a little adult. Your daughter risked her life for a stranger's child. That tells me everything I need to know about her character, and about yours. Carmen smiled faintly. She got her stubbornness from me. But she got her courage from her father. Where is her father? Carmen closed her eyes. I don't talk about him. Let's just say she's better without him. Edward respected her silence. Every family has its secrets. The afternoon passed slowly. Edward helped Carmen take her medications and make a simple chicken broth. He carefully changed Lena's dressings like a surgeon. At 6, his phone rang. Sarah, his secretary. Mr. Caswell, where are you? We have 3 meetings scheduled for tomorrow and cancel everything. Sir, you heard me. Cancel everything for the week. Reschedule for next week. But sir, the Peterson contract needs... Sarah, I'm dealing with more important things than contracts. More important than 50 million. Edward looked at Lena, reading a tattered children's book to her mother. Much more important. He hung up. For the first time in his life, work was not a priority. When night fell, Edward realized he hadn't brought anything to sleep on. Lena brought an old blanket. This is what we have, she said awkwardly. It's perfect. Edward lay on the floor next to Carmen's bed. The blanket smelled faintly of cheap fabric softener, but it was clean. Mr. Caswell, Carmen called softly. Edward, call me Edward. Edward, thank you for everything. Thank you for showing me what really matters. Carmen fell asleep soon after, exhausted from the medications. Lena stayed up longer, whispering stories to herself. Edward stared at the stained ceiling, thinking of his empty home, of Benji alone in the hospital, of all the lost opportunities to be a real father. Tomorrow he would pick up Benji. He would bring him here. He would let the two children get to know each other better. He would begin to build something he never knew he wanted, a real family, even if it was an unlikely family, created by tragedy and held together by gratitude. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, Edward slept on the hard floor with a clearer conscience than he had had in years. Outside, the city continued turning, businesses closing deals, money changing hands, the world he knew following its relentless course. But inside that small apartment, something bigger was being born, something that had no price, something that could not be negotiated or bought, something a brave girl had planted when she smashed a car window and saved more than one life. She had saved a soul. Edward drove through the city with Benji beside him, returning from the hospital. He had promised Lena they would visit late in the afternoon. Benji was excited to see his new friend. "Daddy, will Lena like the drawing I made for her?" "She will love it, champ." It had been a normal day. Meetings were cancelled, but he managed to handle some urgent matters by phone. For the first time, work didn't dominate his thoughts completely. They stopped at a toy store along the way. Benji chose a simple puzzle as a gift. Edward bought extra medications. Carmen was improving, but Dr. Morrison recommended keeping a stock. "Is she still sick?" Benji asked in the car. "A little, but the medicine is helping." They parked in front of the building. The neighborhood seemed more familiar now. Edward recognized some faces and greeted neighbors. He was no longer a complete stranger. They climbed the stairs, talking. Benji recounted his morning in the hospital, the final tests, how happy he was to be okay. Edward knocked on the door. "Lena!" "It's us." Silence. He knocked again, louder. "Lena? Carmen?" A faint sound came from inside, whimpering, groaning. "Lena?" Edward tried the doorknob. "Locked." "Lena, open the door." "Edward?" Lena's voice came shaky and desperate. "Edward, is that you?" "Yes, open the door." They heard hurried footsteps and the sound of locks being undone. Lena opened the crack, her face red from crying. "Edward, thank God you're here. My mother, she's so sick." Edward rushed in. The apartment was in chaos, medications scattered on the floor, bloody towels. Carmen lay on the bed, unconscious, breathing with difficulty. "My God, how long has she been like this?" "Since this morning," Lena sobbed. "I woke up and she was coughing up blood. So much blood. She can't stop." Edward approached the bed. Carmen was very pale, cold sweat on her skin, shallow, rapid breathing. "Did you call anyone?" "I don't know the doctor's number. I don't have a phone. I thought about asking neighbors, but what? They don't like us. They think we're a problem." Edward felt anger. A 6-year-old alone in a medical emergency, watching her mother die and with no one to help. "Benji, stay here with Lena. I'll get the car parked closest to the door." "Will she die?" Lena asked, desperate. "No, we're taking her to the hospital now." Edward ran downstairs. He brought the car to the building's entrance. He returned upstairs. Carmen had worsened, her breathing even weaker. "Lena, help me get her up." They worked together to dress Carmen. Lena knew every necessary movement and care. She had done this all morning on her own. "Did you give her medicine?" "I tried. She threw it all up." Carmen barely responded when spoken to. Edward carried her down the stairs. Lena held the door open, guiding the way, anticipating difficulties. In the car, Lena sat in the back with her mother's head in her lap. "Stay with me, Mom. Edward will get you to the hospital. You will get better." Edward drove as fast as he could. In his rearview mirror, he saw Lena whispering encouraging words, gently wiping her mother's face. "How long have you been caring for her alone?" he asked. "Always. But today was worse, much worse. Why didn't you ask for help earlier?" "From whom?" "I don't have anyone." The simple phrase broke Edward's heart, a child facing a medical emergency completely alone. St. Mary's Hospital was busy. Edward pulled up to the emergency entrance and honked to get attention. "Help! Medical emergency!" A team came out with a stretcher. They saw Carmen and acted immediately. "What happened?" asked a nurse. "Pneumonia. She's been under treatment for 2 days, but worsened drastically today. "Who is the attending doctor?" "Dr. Morrison?" They whisked Carmen inside. Edward, Lena, and Benji waited in the lobby. Lena was shaking, cold, fear, and exhaustion. "You spent the entire day caring for her alone." "Yes. I woke up, and she was coughing up blood. I thought she was going to die." "You were so brave." "I didn't feel brave. I felt so afraid." Benji approached Lena and offered the drawing he had made for her. "I made this for you to make you feel better." Lena took the paper, a drawing of two children holding hands and smiling. "It's us," Benji explained. "Now we're friends." Lena smiled for the first time that day. Dr. Morrison arrived 40 minutes later, his serious expression confirming their worst fears. "How is she?" Edward stood. "Critical. The pneumonia has progressed to sepsis. The condition is much worse." "What does that mean?" Lena asked. Dr. Morrison knelt to speak with her. "Your mother is very, very ill, more so than yesterday. She will need to stay in the hospital for a long time." "How many days?" "At least a week, maybe 2, maybe more." Lena absorbed the information in silence. Edward saw panic growing in her eyes. "What if she doesn't get better?" the girl asked softly. "We will do everything we can. Your mother is strong." "But if it's not enough?" Dr. Morrison looked to Edward for help. How to explain mortality to a 6-year-old? "Lena," Edward knelt beside her, "your mother will fight, the doctors will fight, and we will be here for her. And me, if she doesn't come back, but where will I go?" The question Edward had anticipated, yet it hit him like a punch. "With me," he said without hesitation. "How?" "You will live with me, in my house, as long as you need. Even if it's forever." The question was too direct, too honest. Edward looked at that courageous girl who had spent the entire day caring for her mother alone. "Even if it's forever?" Dr. Morrison interrupted them. "Can I speak with you privately?" he asked Edward. They left the children in the lobby and walked into a corridor. "The situation is serious," Dr. Morrison said quietly. "More serious than I expected." "Could she die?" "She could. Sepsis is unpredictable. Sometimes it responds quickly to treatment, sometimes not." "Exactly. You need to be prepared to care for the girl if the worst happens." Edward looked out the window at Lena, consoling Benji because he was sad for her. "I am ready. Legally, it will be complicated." "Does she have any other relatives?" "None that I know of. I'll talk to social services. We'll make the process easier if needed." They returned to the lobby. Lena looked at them expectantly. "Can I see my mother?" "For a few minutes," Dr. Morrison agreed. They took the children to the ICU. Carmen was connected to several machines but conscious. "Mom?" Lena approached slowly. "Hi, Angel." Her voice was weak but caring. "How are you feeling?" "Better now that you're here. You scared me so much today. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." Lena held her mother's hand gently. "Edward said I can stay at his house." "That's a good idea. You'll be safe there. But I want to be with you." "I know. But this isn't a place for a child. At his house you can play, sleep and eat properly." Carmen looked at Edward. "Thank you for everything." "No need to thank me. I do need to. You came into our lives like an angel." "Your daughter is the angel. She taught me more in 2 days than I learned in years." They had to leave as visiting hours ended. Lena said goodbye to her mother, promising to return the next day. In the car, the children were quiet. Benji because he felt his friend's sadness. Lena because she was processing everything that had happened. "Were you very scared today?" Edward asked. "Very. I thought she was going to die while I watched. But you did everything right, cared for her, gave her medicine, kept her comfortable. It didn't feel like enough. It was more than any child should have to do." They arrived at Edward's house as the sun was setting. Lena got out of the car slowly, taking everything in with new eyes. "Will I live here?" "Yes, for as long as you want. Even if my mother..." "Even then." They entered through the front door this time. Edward wanted Lena to feel like a guest, not an emergency. "Wow," she whispered, looking at the entryway. "It's bigger than I remember." Would you like to see your room? They went upstairs and Edward opened the door to the guest room. This will be your room. Lena entered slowly. The bed was made with clean sheets, soft towels awaited in the bathroom. There were even flowers in a vase. Rosa prepared this for you, Edward explained. Who is Rosa? The housekeeper. She comes to clean a few days a week. Does she know I'm going to stay here? She does. And she's happy. She said the house has been too quiet with only men around. Lena walked to the bed and ran her hand over the comforter. It's soft. Try lying down. She lay down carefully, sinking into the soft mattress. She sighed. It's like sleeping on a cloud. The bathroom is all yours. Clean towels, soap, shampoo. Anything you need. Can I take a shower? Of course. The hot water never runs out here. Really? Really? Edward left her to explore and went to prepare dinner. Nothing fancy. Sandwiches, soup, fruits. Comforting food for a difficult day. Edward? Lena's voice came from above. Yes. The towels are so soft, and they smell so good. He smiled. Details he never noticed were wonderful discoveries for her. An hour later, Lena came downstairs. She had showered and was wearing a large t-shirt Edward lent her as pajamas. Feeling better? Yes. The hot water relaxed me. They had dinner in the kitchen. Lena ate slowly, savoring every flavor. Homemade soup, fresh bread, natural juice. Is it good? It's the best meal I've ever had. Mine too, Benji agreed. Mine too, Edward admitted. After dinner, they showed her the rest of the house. The living room, the office, the backyard with green grass. Can I walk on the grass? Of course, that's what it's for. Lena took off her slippers and stepped barefoot on the grass. She laughed at the tickle. It tickles. The children played in the yard until it got dark, running, laughing. Benji taught Lena how to make paper airplanes. She taught him how to whistle. Edward watched from the porch. Benji was more animated than Edward had ever seen him, talking more, laughing more. He seemed more like a child. At bedtime, Edward took Lena to her room. Everything okay? Need anything? It's perfect. Thank you so much. Do you want me to leave a light on? No need. I've slept in the dark for a long time. Edward didn't doubt it. A child who had cared for a sick mother probably lost many childhood fears. If you need anything, call me. My room is at the end of the hall. Okay. Lena. Yes. You were very brave today. Your mother must be proud. I didn't feel brave. I just did what I had to do. That's exactly what makes you brave. Edward also said goodnight to Benji. Daddy, I like that Lena came to live with us. She's not living. We're just having her stay while her mother gets better. But what if her mother doesn't get better? Edward hesitated. How to answer honestly without scaring her. Then we take care of Lena for as long as she needs. Forever. If necessary. I'd like that. She's nice. And you're happier when she's here. Benji's observation surprised Edward. Children understand much more than adults realize. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow we'll go back to the hospital to see her mother. Edward went downstairs after the children fell asleep. The house felt different now, more alive. It had laughter echoing on the walls, conversations at the table, movement in the hall. For the first time in 2 years, he felt the house was a home. Upstairs, Lena nestled into the soft comforter. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. She thought of her mother alone in the hospital, the beeping machines, the possibility of losing the only family she had. But she also thought of Edward's kindness, Benji's friendship, the safety of being in a home where she didn't have to be afraid. For the first time in a long while, there was hope mixed with fear. And in the room next door, Benji slept more peacefully, no longer alone in a silent house. He had a close friend and a present father, a family growing in unexpected ways. Edward stayed awake late, thinking about the future. Carmen might not survive. Lena might become an orphan. He could become responsible for a child he'd only met a few days ago. The idea didn't scare him. In fact, for the first time in years, the future seemed meaningful. He went up to his room thinking of Clara. Would she approve of his decisions? Would she understand how two courageous children had completely changed his perspective? He was certain she would. Clara had always said life was about human connections, about helping those in need, about using privilege to make a difference. It took a while to fall asleep, but when he finally did, it was with a clear conscience. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, but inside Edward Caswell's house, something precious was growing. A family born from tragedy, strengthened by generosity, united by the understanding that sometimes life's best things come from the hardest moments. A second chance that Edward vowed never to waste. Edward finished his coffee and looked at the clock, 8:30 a.m. He had meetings cancelled, but some urgent calls couldn't wait. "Marina is here," he announced to the children. "I'll work a few hours at the office." The babysitter had returned after a week off with the flu, 50 years old, grey hair, a motherly smile. She had known Benji since infancy. "Good morning, Mr. Caswell," Marina greeted. "And this must be Lena." "Hi," Lena said shyly. "Marina, Lena will be with us for a few days. Her mother is in the hospital." "I understand." "Don't worry, I'll take good care of them." Edward knelt to the children's level. "You'll stay with Marina this morning. She makes the best hot chocolate in town." "Really?" Lena asked Marina. "Family secret?" Marina winked. "I learned from my grandmother." "Benji, show Lena around the house, your toys, the yard, everything." "Sure, Daddy." Edward went up to the office. He turned on the computer, checked emails, and started his first call. But even as he focused on business, part of his attention remained with the children's voices coming from downstairs. "Lena, come see my room." Benji's excited voice echoed through the stairs. Edward smiled. Benji had never shown his toys to anyone, always alone, more accustomed to adults than other children. "Wow," Lena's amazed voice came. "You have all this." Curiosity overrode work. Edward saved the file he was editing and quietly went downstairs. He stood at the end of the hallway, listening without being seen. Benji's room was large, organized and filled with toys, race cars, building blocks, stuffed animals, educational games, gifts from birthdays, Christmas, and random occasions. Edward had always tried to compensate for his absence with presents. "This is my fire truck," Benji explained. "It has a real siren. Listen." The electronic siren echoed through the room. "That's so cool." Lena seemed genuinely impressed. "Does it move?" "It does, and it has a ladder that goes up and down. Want to play?" "Can I?" "Of course. It's meant for playing." Edward peeked through the door crack. Lena knelt on the floor, handling the truck carefully and reverently, as if touching something sacred. "And these?" she asked, pointing to a huge box of building blocks. "They're for building houses, castles, bridges, anything." "Really? Want to try?" Benji opened the box. Hundreds of colorful pieces spilled onto the carpet. For him, it was routine. For Lena, it was like discovering pirate treasure. "Where do I start?" "Anywhere." "There's no rule." Lena picked up a blue piece and then a red one. She began to connect them slowly, experimenting. Benji sat beside her, helping, teaching, sharing. "You've never built anything before?" Benji asked. "No. At home, I only have one cloth doll my mother made." "You mean she sewed it?" "Yes, with scraps of fabric. It has no eyes or hair, but I love it." Benji thought about that. "Where is it?" "At home. I forgot it when my mother went to the hospital." "You must miss it." "Toys don't miss people," Lena laughed. "Mine do. When I go on trips with Daddy, they're sad all alone." Edward smiled at the doorway. Benji's childhood imagination was infecting Lena with possibilities. "What else do you have?" she asked. "Puzzles, games, books?" "Books." "You don't know how to read." "I know a little. My mother taught me the basics, but books are expensive." Benji ran to the bookshelf and returned with arms full. "I have a ton. This one is about a boy who flies. This one is about forest animals. This one has moving pictures when you pull tabs." Lena flipped through the books with extreme care. Colorful pages, detailed illustrations, stories she never imagined existed. "Are they all yours?" "All of them." "Wow!" The word came out as a whisper. Edward felt a lump in his throat. How many children in the world never had their own book? How many Benjis existed versus how many Lenas went hungry for stories? Do you want me to read to you? Benji offered. You know how to read. I learned at school. I'm still slow, but I can... They sat on the bed. Benji opened a book about pirate adventures. He began reading, sounding out some of the harder words. Lena listened, mesmerized. Edward retreated back to the office. His heart ached. Benji was teaching Lena to dream, showing her worlds she never knew existed. He tried to return to work, but couldn't concentrate. The voices continued downstairs. And this one? Lena asked. It's a robot that walks and talks. Want to see? The sound of electronic motors. Lena's startled laugh. Does it follow commands? Some. Say walk, and it walks. Say stop, and it stops. Walk. Metallic steps from the robot. It listened. Stop. Silence. That's magic. Edward went down again, this time entering the room. Having fun? Daddy, Benji ran to him. Lena never saw a walking robot. Never. Never, Lena confirmed. Only on the neighbor's TV. She can play with anything, right, Daddy? Of course. While she's here, everything is hers too. Lena looked at Edward with gratitude. Thank you, I won't break anything. Don't worry. Toys are for playing, not for keeping. Marina appeared in the doorway. Kids, hot chocolate is ready. Let's go. Benji pulled Lena by the hand. They ran downstairs. Edward stayed in the room looking at the organized mess, blocks scattered, books open, toys out of boxes. How long had that room not seen so much life? Benji always played alone, quietly, methodically, as if afraid to be noisy or bother anyone. But with Lena there, he was different, more childlike, more joyful, more himself. Edward went to the kitchen. The children sat at the table, drinking hot chocolate and eating cookies, chatting happily. Marina, I'm stepping out for a while, an hour at most. Of course, sir. Keep playing. When I return, maybe we'll do something fun. What? Benji asked, curious. It's a surprise. Edward drove to the mall. He knew a toy store well, the place where he bought gifts for Benji. But this time he had a specific mission, a doll. He had never bought a doll. He didn't know where to start. Hundreds on the shelves. Big dolls, small dolls, dolls that talk, dolls that cry, dolls that wet themselves. Can I help you? Asked a saleswoman. I want a doll for a 6-year-old girl. Any preference? Baby doll, fashion doll, character doll. Edward thought of Lena and the cloth doll her mother had made, patched together with scraps and loved fiercely. Something special, a doll she can take anywhere, one that won't break easily. The saleswoman led him to a specific section. These ones are more durable for active play. Edward examined the options. A brown-haired doll caught his eye. Not too big, not too small. Simple but pretty outfit. Eyes that blinked. A sweet smile. This one. Excellent choice. It comes with extra clothes and some accessories. Perfect. He also bought a few children's books. Simple stories Lena could read by herself once she improved. He returned home in 40 minutes. He hid the bag in the trunk. He wanted it to be a special surprise. He entered through the kitchen. Marina was preparing lunch. How are they? Playing in the yard. Benji is teaching her how to kick a ball. Edward went to the window. The two children ran across the lawn, Benji gently kicking the ball so Lena could catch it. She laughed every time she kicked it back. When was the last time he saw Benji so happy? When was the last time the yard had so much movement? Lunch is almost ready, Marina announced. I'll get the bag from the car. And Marina, yes? Can you prepare a picnic basket for this afternoon? We're going to the park. Of course, it's been a while since Benji went to the park. It had indeed. Edward always promised to take him, but something more urgent always came up. A meeting, a phone call, a contract. Today would be different. After lunch, he called the children to the living room. I have something for you both. He took the doll from the bag. Lena's eyes widened. For me? Just for you. Lena took the doll reverently, touching the soft hair, the colorful dress, the blinking eyes. She's beautiful. What will you name her? Lena thought seriously. Clara. Her name will be Clara. Edward felt a pang in his chest. Clara, his wife's name. Coincidence or child's intuition? Why Clara? I don't know. She seems like a Clara. Benji came over to see the doll. She really blinks. Blink, Lena laughed, making the doll blink repeatedly. And for you, Edward said to Benji, new adventure books. Thank you, Daddy. The children sat on the sofa, Lena cradling the doll. Benji flipping through the books. Edward watched, memorizing the moment. Simple happiness, natural, genuine. Something money couldn't buy, but his presence could provide. The phone rang. Sarah, his secretary. Mr. Caswell, Peterson is calling about tomorrow's meeting, and there are 3 contracts waiting for approval, and Edward looked at the children on the sofa, Lena whispering stories to the doll, Benji showing her pictures from the books. Sarah? Yes, sir. Cancel everything today. Everything tomorrow, too. Sir, you heard me. Cancel everything. Reschedule for next week. But, sir, these are important engagements. I have more important engagements here. He hung up before she could object. Who wants to go to the park? He announced. Me! The 2 children jumped off the sofa. We'll have a picnic, play and take pictures. Spend the whole afternoon there. Really? Benji asked, incredulous. Really? Let's have real fun. Marina had already prepared the basket. Sandwiches, fruits, juices, cookies. Edward grabbed a camera that had sat in his drawer for months. The park was a 10-minute drive away. Large with a playground, a duck pond and picnic areas. Edward knew it because he passed by every day on his way to work but had never stopped. Wow, it's huge, Lena exclaimed upon seeing the park. There's a swing. Benji pointed to the playground. And ducks! Lena saw the pond. They found a table under a tree. Edward spread the checkered blanket Marina had placed in the basket. The children helped arrange the food. Can I go see the ducks? Lena asked. Let's all go together. They walked to the pond. Dozens of ducks floated calmly. Some families were feeding them breadcrumbs. Are they tame? Lena asked. Very tame. They're used to people. Edward bought corn from a nearby machine and gave handfuls to the children. Throw it slowly. They'll come to you. Lena threw some grains. A duck approached immediately. She laughed in surprise. He came. Look, Benji. Throw more. Call the others. Soon they were surrounded by ducks. Lena delighted as if it were the greatest spectacle. Benji laughed at her joy. Edward took photos, dozens of pictures of pure happiness. Lena feeding the ducks, Benji teaching her about different species, the 2 of them smiling at the camera. Now let's go to the playground, Edward suggested. The playground was full of children, swings, slides, seesaws. Lena hesitated at the entrance, looking around. You've never played on a playground? Edward asked. No, I only watched from afar. Then today is your first time. Benji took her hand. Come on, I'll teach you everything. They ran to the swings. Benji helped Lena get seated and taught her how to pump her legs. Edward pushed them both alternately. Higher, Lena shouted, laughing. Higher, Benji echoed. Then came the slide. Lena was scared at first. It was very tall. But with Benji encouraging her, she went down once, then again, then 10 more times. I'm flying, she shouted each time she descended. Edward kept photographing every moment, every smile, every discovery. When they tired of the playground, they returned to the table. Marina had prepared perfect sandwiches, ham, cheese, fresh lettuce, cold juice, and still warm cookies. Is it good? Edward asked. This is the best picnic of my life, Lena said. Mine too, Benji agreed. Mine too, Edward admitted. After eating, they played tag on the grass. Edward ran after the children, pretending to be a slow monster. They screamed and laughed, hiding behind trees. Got you, he shouted, lifting Lena into the air. That's not fair, you're too big, she protested, laughing. Now it's my turn to be the monster, Benji announced. They ran for another hour. Edward couldn't remember the last time he had literally run for fun, without hurry, without destination. When they finally flopped onto the blanket, exhausted, the sun was beginning to set. I'm tired, Benji sighed, lying on his father's lap. Good tired, Lena said, hugging the doll, Clara. Edward looked at the 2 children. Wind-tousled hair, rosy cheeks from running, genuine smiles of happiness. "Dad," Benji said softly. "Yes, son. Thank you for today." "It was the best day of my life." Benji turned and gave him a long, tight hug full of love. Edward felt tears in his eyes. When was the last time Benji had hugged him like that? When was the last time they had spent an entire day together without interruptions? "Thank you, champ, for reminding me what truly matters." "What truly matters?" Lena asked. Edward looked at her, then at Benji, then at the pond where ducks floated. "Moments like this, you two, being truly present." "Not work?" Benji asked. "Work is to earn money. Money is to have moments like this. I was doing it all backward." They stayed in the park until the sun fully set. Edward carried the two sleeping children to the car, Lena hugging the doll Clara, Benji holding one of the new books. On the drive home, Edward drove slowly. He didn't want the day to end. He didn't want to return to the reality of ringing phones and urgent emails. For the first time in years, he had fully lived in the present, without thinking about the next commitment, without checking his phone every 5 minutes, without hurry. Just a father playing with two children who were teaching him how to be human again. At home, he carried the children to their rooms. He tucked Benji into his bed and kissed his forehead. "Daddy." "Yes." "Can we do this again? We will make this our routine." "Promise." "I promise." He took Lena to her room and helped her change clothes. She placed the doll Clara next to her pillow. "Will she sleep with me?" "Sure. She's yours." "Thank you for everything. The happiest day of my life." Edward kissed her forehead as well. "Thank you for showing me how to be a real father." He went downstairs to the living room, grabbed the camera, and uploaded the photos to his computer. Dozens of images of pure happiness, genuine smiles, spontaneous moments. He printed them all. He framed some for the living room and others for the office. He wanted to remember this day always. The day he chose to be present. The day when two children taught him that success isn't measured in dollars but in hugs. The day he discovered that being a father was the best job in the world. Edward's phone rang at 7 in the morning. "Dr. Morrison. Good news. Carmen has been cleared for discharge. You can take her home today." Edward felt relief and anxiety at the same time. Carmen was better, but home was a one-room apartment without ventilation, no suitable environment for someone recovering from pneumonia. Is she fully recovered? Physically, yes, but she needs rest, good nutrition, and a clean environment. No exertion for at least a month. Edward thought of the cramped apartment, tight stairs, shared bathroom. Carmen could not recover properly there. "Dr. Morrison, I have an idea." 2 hours later, Edward was driving through a middle-class neighborhood. Small but well-kept houses, tree-lined streets, far from the east side, but also far from his mansion. He stopped in front of a single-story house, 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a small grass yard. A simple iron gate and a light yellow facade. It was one of the properties his company had acquired for a cancelled real estate project, vacant for 6 months, but in perfect condition. Edward took out his phone and called the property manager. "Marcus, it's Edward Caswell. I need to furnish the house on Flowers Street, 247 today." "Today, sir?" "Today." Simple but comfortable furniture. 2 beds, a sofa, a dining table, a refrigerator, and a stove. The basics. To rent. To live in. A family is moving in today. "Understood. I'll arrange it." Edward returned home. Lena was anxiously packing her few belongings in a bag. "Am I going to see my mother today?" "You will. And more than that, you two are going to a home. To our old home. To a new home." Lena paused, mid-packing. "What do you mean?" "It's a surprise." They went to pick up Carmen from the hospital. She was dressed, sitting in a chair, still pale but smiling. Lena ran to her. "Mom." "Hi, Angel. How are you?" "I'm good. Edward took care of me." "And look." Lena showed her the doll Clara. "He bought this for me." Carmen looked at Edward gratefully. "You didn't have to." "I did. She deserves it." The doctor gave the final instructions: rest, medication on schedule, Follow up in a week. Carmen signed the discharge papers. Ready to go home? Edward asked. Ready. They left the hospital. Carmen looked puzzled at the direction Edward took. This isn't where I live. I know. Edward drove to Flower Street and stopped in front of the yellow house. Carmen looked confused. Why are we stopping here? Edward got out, approached her, and handed her a bundle of keys. Because we have arrived home. Carmen looked at the keys, then at the house, and then at Edward. I don't understand. This is your new home, yours and Lena's. What do you mean, my home? It's a modest house, but safe and dignified, away from danger, away from dampness, away from problems. Edward, I can't accept this. You can. It's the least you deserve. You deserve peace and autonomy. Lena jumped out of the car and ran to the gate. Can I go in? Carmen still held the keys, stunned. Edward, it's not too much. It's necessary. You need to recover in a healthy environment. Lena needs stability. But I can't afford to. You don't have to pay. The house was empty anyway. I cannot accept charity. It's not charity. It's justice. Your daughter saved my son. This house doesn't make up even 1% of that debt. Carmen looked at Lena, who was standing next to the gate, staring at the house. Mom, can I see inside? Carmen sighed, accepting the keys. All right, let's take a look. They opened the gate and walked through the small garden to the front door. Carmen inserted the key into the lock, turned, and the door opened. Wow, she whispered. The living room was simply furnished, a beige sofa, a coffee table, a small bookshelf, and a mid-sized TV. Everything was new but without extravagance. Lena ran inside. Mom, look how big it is! And it has a real sofa. She ran through the rooms, a kitchen with a fridge and stove and small table, 2 bedrooms with made beds, a private bathroom with a hot shower, simple but well cared for. Is this my room? She shouted from the back of the house. If you want, Carmen replied, still taking it all in. I want it. It has a window to the yard. Edward and Carmen walked to Lena's room, a small but cozy space with a single bed, a wardrobe and a desk. For studying, Edward explained, pointing to the desk. She will study. I will enroll her in a school. I already spoke to the principal. Carmen sat on the bed, emotional. Edward, all this, I don't know how to thank you. Live. Recover, be happy. Lena ran back over. Mum, there's a yard, small, but it's ours. They went outside to see. A yard with grass, a few flowers, and a clothesline area. Simple but cared for. Can I plant things? Lena asked. You can plant whatever you want, Edward said. Tomatoes. I want to plant tomatoes, Carmen laughed. The first time Edward had seen her laugh genuinely. She always wanted plants. In the apartment, there was no space. Here, you can. They went back inside. Carmen explored every corner. A stocked fridge with basics, cabinets with some supplies, cleaning products, clean bedding. Sayu thought of everything. I wanted this to feel like home from day one. Carmen sat on the new sofa, running her hand over the fabric. It's soft, and it smells new. Everything is new, for you two to start from scratch. Lena flopped next to her mother. Do you like it, Mom? I love it, sweetheart. Are we going to live here forever? Carmen looked at Edward. For as long as you want, he said. No rush to go anywhere. And if you get tired of helping us? I won't, he replied. You two are part of my life now. They spent the afternoon settling in. Edward brought the few belongings from the old apartment. Clothes, a few utensils, Lena's cloth doll. Everything fit in one trip. Was that really all we had? Carmen whispered, looking at the 2 bags. That was all, but now we have an entire house, Lena said with optimism. That night, Edward and Benji left. He left mother and daughter to adapt to their new home. Did they like it? Benji asked in the car. They loved it? Will Lena still be my friend? Of course. Now that she has a fixed address, she can visit you anytime. Can I visit her? Always. 3 days later, Carmen called Edward. Would you like to come for dinner? Lena and I want to repay your kindness. You don't need to repay anything. We do. A simple dinner, but made with love. All right. What time? 7. We'll be there. Edward and Benji arrived on time. Carmen opened the door, smiling, looking healthier and stronger. Welcome to our home. The house smelled like homemade cooking. Lena came running. Benji, come see my room all set up. The children disappeared down the halls. Edward followed Carmen into the kitchen. Can I help? Almost everything is ready. The small table was carefully set. A simple tablecloth, mismatched but clean plates, makeshift candles in bottles. It looks lovely, Edward said. I learned to make things pretty with little. Necessity teaches. Dinner was simple but delicious. Roasted chicken, rice, salad and farofa. Home-style flavors Edward hadn't tasted in years. It's wonderful, he complimented. Thank you, it's good to cook in a real kitchen. The children talked about Lena's new school starting next week. Benji promised to introduce her to his classmates. Will you be in the same class? Carmen asked. No, but it's a small school. Everyone knows each other, Edward explained. After dinner, while the children played in the yard, Carmen and Edward sat at the table chatting. You know, Carmen said, Lena always asked about her father. Edward listened attentively. This was the first time she had mentioned the subject. And what did you tell her? I lied. I said he had to travel. Maybe he would come back someday. Why? Carmen sighed deeply. Because the truth was too ugly for a child. Would you like to tell it? We had a good start, you know. He was loving, hard-working, made me laugh. Edward waited for her to continue. Then he started drinking. At first, only on weekends. Then every day. Then he became violent. He beat you. He threatened me, yelled at me, broke things. When I found out I was pregnant, I realized I couldn't raise a child in that environment. You ran away. I ran. One night when he was too drunk to notice, I took my things and disappeared. And after that, years later, I heard he was arrested for a bar fight that ended badly. Someone died. Edward felt a chill. Carmen had escaped a future killer. Lena never knew about this. Never. I didn't want her to have that image of her father, so I just said we broke up and he was gone. That was wise. Was it? Sometimes I think I should have told the truth. Why? So she would understand why it was always just the two of us. Why we never had help. Edward watched Lena play with Benji in the yard. Innocent children, unaware of adult tragedies. She'll understand when she's older, if she wants to. Do you think so? I'm sure. She already knows what matters, that you love her and have always been there for her. Carmen discreetly wiped her eyes. You know what else hurts me? What? Lena grew up thinking she wasn't worth it, that she didn't deserve good things, that our life would always be about chasing basics. And now she has a home, a school, a new doll, a real friend. Carmen looked at Edward. A future. She always had a future. She just didn't have opportunity. Is that the same thing? No. A future is about dreaming. Opportunity is about achieving. Carmen smiled. You have a unique way of seeing things. I learned from the two of you, especially from Lena. What did she teach you? That courage has no size, that kindness has no price, that family doesn't need to share blood. The children returned, announcing they had plans for the evening. Benji would spend the night in Lena's room. They would watch a movie and make popcorn. Seems everything is worked out, Edward laughed. Can I really stay? Benji asked. You can, but I will come get you early tomorrow. Promise? I promise. Edward said goodnight at the door. Carmen escorted him to the gate. Edward? Yes. Thank you. For everything, for the house, for listening, for family. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. Edward drove home alone for the first time in days. The house felt too big, too empty, too silent, but not sad, because he knew tomorrow there would be laughter again. Visits, conversations, life. He had discovered that family wasn't about the size of a house or the amount of money. It was about people who care for one another. Carmen and Lena had transformed a small house into a vast home with simplicity, honesty, and love. And he had learned that sometimes life's best things come wrapped in tragedy. Back at the new house, Carmen tucked the two children into bed. They whispered plans for the next day. Mum? Yes, Angel. I love our new home. Me too. And I love Edward and Benji. I do too. They're our special friends. They are indeed very special. Forever? Forever. She turned off the light and closed the door. Carmen sat in the small living room, reflecting on her new life. Simple, clean, human. Exactly how she had always dreamed it could be. Sunday dawned bright and sunny. Edward woke early, excited about the day's plans. There was an important surprise waiting for Lena, something he had been preparing for a week. Benji, wake up. We're going to see Lena and Carmen. Now it's still early, Benji groaned, stretching in bed. Yes, it's early, but today is a special day. Why? You'll find out. Edward showered quickly as Benji got dressed. At breakfast, the boy was curious. What's the surprise? If I tell you, it stops being a surprise. Give me a hint. It has to do with school. Benji's eyes lit up. Lena will go to school with me. Edward smiled but didn't answer. He grabbed a bag hidden in the closet. Inside, neatly folded, were a new school uniform and a colorful lunchbox. They drove to the house on Flowers Street. It was only 8 in the morning, but Edward knew Carmen and Lena always woke early. Habits of those who had spent too long selling candy on the streets. They knocked on the door. Carmen answered, surprised. Edward. Benji. So early. Good morning, Carmen. May we come in? I have something for Lena. Of course. She's in the yard, watering the plants. Edward found Lena tending to small tomato seedlings. She held an improvised watering can, a plastic bottle with holes in the cap. Good morning, gardener. Edward, Benji. She dropped the watering can and ran to them. You came early. I came because I have something very important for you. For me? Edward knelt and handed her the bag. Open it. Lena unwrapped it carefully, first taking out the uniform. A navy blue skirt, a white blouse, and a grey sweater, all in her size. Then the lunchbox, pink with colorful butterfly stickers and compartments for a sandwich, fruit, and juice. It's a school uniform, she said, touching the fabric as if it were silk. Yes, it is. But what for? Edward smiled. On Monday, you start at the same school as Benji. Lena froze, literally stopped moving, staring at the uniform. Silence stretched for long seconds. Lena, Edward worried. Are you okay? She lifted her eyes, bright with emotion. A huge smile spread across her face. Really? A real school? A real school with teachers, books, and friends. And I'll be in your class, Benji added, excited. Lena hugged the uniform to her chest. I always dreamed of studying. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. And now you will. I never told Mom because I didn't want her to be sad. Edward felt his heart clench. Lena protected her mother, even at the cost of her own dreams. Why would she be sad? Because school costs money, and we didn't have money. Edward hugged her gently. You deserve to study, you deserve to dream, you deserve all the good things life can offer. And now you will have all of it. Lena stepped back to look at the uniform again. Can I try it on? Of course. Carmen, may she try on the uniform? Yes. Go to your room, dear. Lena ran off, carrying the new clothes. Carmen approached Edward. Thank you. You can't imagine what this means to her. I do. Every child deserves education. She will be a great student, so smart and curious. I'm sure of it, and she will have Benji to help her settle in. Benji nodded solemnly. I'll introduce her to everyone, and I'll share my lunch if she forgets hers. Lena returned 5 minutes later, dressed in the uniform. It fit perfectly. The skirt at the right length, the blouse neither too tight nor too loose. She spun to show off. How do I look? Beautiful, Carmen said, tears in her eyes. Like a real student, Benji added. Like a real student, Edward confirmed. Lena picked up the lunchbox and opened it. It had compartments for a sandwich, fruit and juice, all neatly organized and colorful. Can I bring the doll Clara on the first day? You can bring anything you want. It's your school now. Our school, Benji corrected. We're in the same school now. The children began making excited plans, what subjects they would have, where they would sit during recess, what their teacher would be like. Lena asked 1,000 questions, and Benji patiently answered all of them. "Let's play outside," Benji suggested. "I can teach you how to play soccer properly." "Soccer? There's PE at school. Everyone plays soccer." "I don't know how to play. I'll teach, it's easy." They ran into the yard, leaving Edward and Carmen alone in the living room. "Want some coffee?" Carmen offered. "I'd love some." They sat on the small front porch, watching the children in the yard. Lena still wore her uniform, as if she never wanted to take it off. "She's beaming," Carmen remarked. She's going to be very happy at school." "How did you arrange her spot?" "I spoke with the principal. I explained the situation. She was touched by her story." "And the costs?" "Everything is already taken care of. Tuition, supplies, uniform, lunch, all of it." Carmen shook her head. "You never cease to amaze us." Edward took a sip of coffee and watched Lena attempt to kick the ball. Benji ran beside her, giving tips and encouragement. "Carmen." "Yes." Edward took a deep breath. There was something he had needed to say for days. "Lena came into my life when I needed it most, even though she didn't know it." Carmen paused, stirring her coffee, and looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I was lost, focused only on work, forgetting how to be a father, forgetting how to be human. And she changed that. She made me see what truly matters." Edward glanced at Lena in the distance. "She gave me back my son. Benji was always your son. He was my son biologically, but not emotionally. I wasn't present. I wasn't truly part of his life." Carmen nodded in understanding. "And now? Now we are father and son in every sense. Playing together, talking, laughing. He hugs me without fear of interrupting." "That's good." Edward turned to Carmen. "And that I will never forget. I'll be forever grateful. You don't owe us anything. I owe everything." Lena saved Benji physically, but she saved both of us emotionally. Carmen smiled softly. "She has that gift. She always has, seeing the best in people." "How did you teach her that?" "I didn't teach her. She was born that way. I only tried not to get in the way." The children returned, announcing they already planned for the night. Benji would sleep in Lena's room, they'd watch a movie, and make popcorn. "Seems everything is settled," Edward laughed. "Can he really stay?" Benji asked. "Yes, but early tomorrow morning I'll come pick him up." "Promise." "I promise." Edward said goodbye at the door. Carmen walked him to the gate. "Edward?" "Yes. Thank you. For listening. For not judging. For—" she searched for words. "For seeing us as people. You have always been people, always special. I didn't feel special. I felt invisible. And now I feel seen, respected, like I deserve to be here." Edward looked out the window at the quiet neighborhood. Houses with families, children playing in the street. "You deserve to be anywhere. This house is not a favor, it's your right." "Right. Lena saved my son, you saved my soul. If anyone owed anything here, it's me." Carmen shook her head. "It's not debt, it's friendship." "Exactly." They sat in comfortable silence, the sound of children playing, the clock ticking, the sense that everything was in its right place. "Carmen." "Yes." "The past doesn't change, but the present transforms through listening." She looked at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "You carried that story alone for 6 years. Now you shared it with me. The burden becomes lighter when it's shared." "That's true. I feel lighter. And I feel whole, knowing your story, understanding where such strength comes from." "Strength?" "Raising a daughter like Lena on your own, escaping a dangerous situation, starting over from nothing, that is pure strength." Carmen smiled, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. It's been so long since someone saw courage where I only saw survival. They're the same thing. Surviving with dignity is the highest form of courage." The children came back, announcing plans for the night. Benji would stay in Lena's room, and they would watch a movie and make popcorn. "Seems everything is sorted," Edward said with a laugh. "May I really stay?" Benji asked. "You may, but tomorrow morning I'll come pick you up." "Promise?" "I promise." Edward said goodbye at the door. Carmen accompanied him to the gate. "Edward?" "Yes." Thank you for everything, for the house, for listening, for family. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Edward drove home alone for the first time in days. The house felt too big, too empty, too silent, but not sad, because he knew tomorrow there would be laughter again, visits, conversations, life. He had learned that family isn't about the size of a house or the amount of money. It's about people who care for each other. Carmen and Lena had transformed a small house into a vast home through simplicity, honesty, and love. And he had learned that sometimes life's best things come wrapped in tragedy. Back at the new house, Carmen tucked the two children into bed. They whispered plans for the next day. "Mom?" "Yes? I love our new home." "Me too." If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.